Every single second, you are breathing in ghost pee. Dinosaur pee, blue whale pee, historical figure pee. The water cycle ensures that every drop of liquid on Earth has passed through a bladder at some point. But if you look out at the vast, shimmering expanse of the global ocean, a much more immediate, pressing question arises. There are an estimated 3.5 trillion fish swimming in the sea right now. Every single one of them is eating, processing nutrients, and living out its life. So, as you dive into that crystal-clear tropical water on vacation, or take an accidental gulp of surf while boogie boarding, you have to wonder, do fish pee? And if they do, are we essentially swimming in a massive, planet-sized bowl of aquatic urine? The answer is not just a simple yes or no. It is a mind-bending journey into evolutionary biology, fluid dynamics, and ecological architecture. In fact, if fish suddenly stopped peeing tomorrow, life on Earth as we know it would utterly collapse. To understand why fish pee, and why the way they do it is so radically different from humans, we have to look at what urine actually is. At its core, peeing is not just about getting rid of excess water, it is a critical waste management system. When any animal eats protein, its body breaks down those proteins into amino acids. The byproduct of this metabolic process is a highly toxic chemical compound called ammonia. Ammonia is nasty stuff. If it builds up in your bloodstream, it destroys cells, damages organs, and quickly becomes fatal. Mammals like humans solve this problem by evolving a complex liver that converts toxic ammonia into a much milder, less harmful substance called urea, which is then filtered by the kidneys, mixed with water, and expelled. But fish live in a completely different world. They are surrounded by the ultimate solvent, water. Because they are constantly immersed in fluid, most fish did not need to evolve the energy-expensive internal plumbing required to turn ammonia into urea. Instead, they just let the ammonia wash away. But here is the first major twist: they do not just use a bladder to do it. For a vast majority of fish, their primary urination organs are actually their gills. As water flows over a fish's gills to provide oxygen, the toxic ammonia in their blood simply diffuses straight out across the thin membranes and into the surrounding ocean. It is a continuous, elegant, and incredibly efficient flush. However, saying fish just bleed ammonia into the sea ignores a massive, watery dilemma. The aquatic world is split into two completely distinct realms: freshwater lakes and rivers, and saltwater oceans. This creates a monumental biological crisis dictated by the laws of osmosis. Osmosis is the natural tendency of water to move across a membrane from an area of low salt concentration to an area of high salt concentration, seeking equilibrium. Because of osmosis, a fish living in a freshwater river faces the exact opposite physical challenge of a fish living in the salty Atlantic Ocean. Consequently, their peeing habits are polar opposites. Let us start with freshwater fish, like a trout or a goldfish. A freshwater fish is significantly saltier than the water it swims in. By the relentless laws of physics, water is constantly trying to force its way into the fish's body through its skin, its mouth, and its gills. A freshwater fish is essentially a sponge in a downpour. If it did not have a mechanism to deal with this, it would literally absorb so much water that its cells would rupture and it would explode from the inside out. To survive, freshwater fish almost never drink water intentionally. Instead, their kidneys work in overdrive, acting like high-powered bilge pumps. They filter out massive amounts of water while desperately retaining precious salts. As a result, freshwater fish pee constantly. They produce a continuous, incredibly diluted stream of urine that is almost entirely water. A freshwater fish can urinate up to 30% of its total body weight every single day. If humans peed at that rate, you would be leaving behind 5 gallons of fluid daily. Now, let us flip the script and look at saltwater fish, like a cod or a tuna. The ocean is packed with salt, far saltier than the inside of a fish's body. Because of osmosis, the ocean is constantly trying to suck the moisture out of the saltwater fish. A marine fish is in a perpetual state of dehydration, living in a desert made of water. If a saltwater fish peed like a freshwater fish, it would shrivel up and die within hours. To combat this, saltwater fish have to drink like absolute champions. They gulp down seawater constantly to stay hydrated. But drinking saltwater introduces a dangerous amount of salt into their systems. To handle this, their specialized kidneys and gills work together to filter out the salt and pump it back into the ocean, while holding on to every single drop of precious H2O. Because water is so scarce inside their bodies, marine fish pee very little. Their urine is not a watery stream, it is a highly concentrated, thick, almost paste-like substance. They produce just a tiny fraction of their body weight in pee each day, conserving every ounce of moisture they can. So, if you are swimming in the ocean, you are surrounded by trillions of fish that are either constantly diffusing ammonia out of their gills or occasionally expelling highly concentrated droplets of metabolic waste. But before you get grossed out and vow never to touch the ocean again, you need to understand that fish pee is the secret currency of the underwater world. It is the lifeblood of the entire marine ecosystem. Nowhere is this truer than on a coral reef. Coral reefs are often called the rainforests of the sea, bursting with a dazzling array of biodiversity. Yet, geometrically speaking, many tropical reefs exist in what are effectively oceanic deserts, areas of the tropical ocean that are incredibly pristine but severely lacking in basic nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. Without these nutrients, the microscopic algae called zooxanthellae, which live inside corals and give them their brilliant colors, cannot grow. If the algae cannot grow, the corals starve, bleach, and die, causing the entire ecosystem to collapse. This is where fish pee steps in as the ultimate fertilizer. When schools of fish forage out in the open ocean and return to the safety of the reef at night to rest, they bring with them a massive payload of nutrients. As they hover over the coral structures, they release their waste. The ammonia excreted through their gills and the phosphorus found in their urine are exactly what the coral algae need to survive. It is a direct, hyperlocalized injection of liquid gold. Marine biologists have conducted fascinating studies demonstrating this exact phenomenon. In reefs where overfishing has wiped out large fish populations, the corals are stunted, pale, and struggling. But in protected marine reserves where massive schools of predatory fish like grunts, snappers, and groupers thrive, the corals are vibrant, fast-growing, and resilient. The difference isn't just the absence of human interference, it is the sheer volume of fish pee enriching the habitat. The fish act as mobile nutrient conveyors, eating out in the deep blue and depositing essential fertilizers right onto the doorsteps of the living reef. But the story of aquatic waste takes an even stranger turn when we look at the rule breakers of the ocean, the sharks and rays. Sharks belong to a class of fish called elasmobranchs, and they handle the osmotic pressure of the ocean in a completely unique, almost terrifyingly bizarre way. While bony fish fight the ocean's salinity by drinking seawater or pumping out water, sharks decided to play the ocean at its own game. Remember how water moves toward higher salt concentrations? Sharks realized that if they could make the inside of their bodies just as salty, or even saltier, than the surrounding ocean, water wouldn't leak out of them. To achieve this, sharks do something that would kill a human instantly: they do not excrete their urea. Instead of flushing it out, a shark's kidneys reabsorb the metabolic waste and pump it directly back into their muscle tissue and bloodstream. They deliberately retain massive amounts of urea and another compound called trimethylamine oxide. This makes their blood incredibly dense and concentrated. Because their internal fluids are technically saltier than the sea, sharks do not dehydrate. Instead, water naturally diffuses into their bodies through their skin. Because they retain their urea, sharks rarely need to urinate in the traditional sense. Their entire bodies are thoroughly marinated in their own waste components. This is actually why fresh shark meat has a notorious, distinct smell of ammonia if it isn't processed immediately and correctly after harvest. The shark's survival mechanism is quite literally to turn its own flesh into a sponge of metabolic waste. If you think sharks are strange, consider the hagfish. This ancient, jawless creature lives on the deep ocean floor and is famous for its ability to produce suffocating amounts of thick slime when threatened. But the hagfish is also an evolutionary anomaly when it comes to fluid balance. It is the only known vertebrate whose internal salt concentration matches the exact salinity of the surrounding ocean water. It doesn't fight osmosis at all because it is perfectly balanced with the sea. Because of this, the hagfish doesn't need complex kidneys to pump water in or out. It simply exists in a state of perfect, salty equilibrium, meaning its version of urination is practically non-existent compared to its evolutionary cousins. As we look closer at the sheer scale of this aquatic cycle, we begin to realize that the chemistry of our planet is fundamentally dictated by animal waste. Take the global carbon cycle, for example. The ocean is one of the world's largest carbon sinks, absorbing immense amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and helping to regulate global temperatures. Fish play a massive, underappreciated role in this system through their digestion and excretion. When fish process food, the chemical reactions in their intestines produce calcium carbonate, essentially a type of limestone. This solid material is expelled along with their waste. These tiny crystals of calcium carbonate help neutralize the acidity of the ocean water and eventually sink to the bottom of the sea, locking away carbon for thousands of years. The simple act of fish processing food and releasing waste is a global thermostat, buffering the oceans against rapid climate change. Yet, this delicate, finely tuned cycle is under severe threat from human activity. Agricultural runoff from industrial farming pours millions of tons of synthetic nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers into rivers, which eventually empty into the ocean. While fish pee provides a perfectly balanced, localized dose of nutrients for coral reefs, our industrial runoff creates an overwhelming, toxic deluge. This massive influx of artificial nutrients triggers catastrophic algal blooms. These blooms grow so rapidly and densely that they block out sunlight, and when the algae inevitably dies and decomposes, the process consumes all the available oxygen in the water. This creates massive dead zones, vast stretches of the ocean where the water is completely devoid of oxygen, causing fish, crabs, and marine life to suffocate en masse. We are overriding nature's elegant waste management and recycling system with our own toxic surpluses. Understanding the world of fish urination changes the way we perceive nature entirely. It forces us to dismantle our anthropocentric view of waste. To a human, urine is something dirty, a waste product to be flushed away down a pipe, hidden from sight, and treated as a biohazard. But in the natural world, waste is an illusion. There is no such thing as a way. Every molecule excreted by one organism is a vital building block for another. The ammonia leaving a fish's gills isn't pollution, it is a meal for phytoplankton. Those phytoplankton capture sunlight and produce over 50% of the oxygen we breathe, while simultaneously serving as the foundational food source for tiny krill, which feed the majestic blue whales. The ocean is not a stagnant pool of water filled with animal waste. It is a dynamic, hyperconnected, living organism where the line between the environment and the creature blurry at best. A fish does not merely live in the water, the fish is the water, constantly exchanging molecules, shifting balances, and sustaining the delicate equilibrium that allows life to flourish on this pale blue dot. So, the next time you find yourself standing on a beach, watching the waves crash against the shore, or peering into a freshwater aquarium, look past the scales and the fins. Think about the silent, invisible chemical ballet happening right beneath the surface. Think about the freshwater fish pumping out floods of water to defy physics, the saltwater fish hoarding every precious droplet, the sharks marinating in their own ingenuity, and the corals eagerly catching the chemical bounty of the passing schools. Do fish pee? Yes, absolutely, in ways that are beautifully complex, bizarre, and profoundly vital. And the world is infinitely better, cleaner, and more alive because of it.